His signature was already dry on the divorce papers before I even knew they existed, I whispered to myself, staring at the medical bracelet still wrapped around my wrist. It had been only 2 days since my release from the hospital after 6 grueling months of chemotherapy. 2 days of blessed normalcy in our Chicago penthouse before I discovered what Tom had been doing while I fought for my life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I stood frozen in the doorway of our home office, watching my husband of 12 years as he spoke animatedly on the phone, unaware of my presence. The divorce was finalized yesterday, he told whoever was on the other end, his voice lighter than I'd heard it in months. She doesn't know yet. I figured I'd wait until she's stronger to break the news. A pause. I know, Rebecca. It seems cruel, but the lawyers said this was cleaner. Her name's already off everything important. The house, the company, the accounts. The room tilted slightly as I gripped the doorframe, my knuckles turning white. Tom Wilson, the man who had promised in sickness and in health, had divorced me while I underwent cancer treatment. While I'd been fighting nausea and fatigue in sterile hospital rooms, he'd been meeting with lawyers, removing my name from our shared assets, and apparently growing closer to someone named Rebecca. I backed away silently, my socked feet making no sound on the hardwood floors of the home we'd selected together years ago. My heart hammered in my chest, not with sadness, but with an unfamiliar burning rage that seemed to clear my chemo-fogged brain for the first time in months. I'd given everything to this man. I'd left my promising marketing career to help build Horizon Solutions from a struggling startup into Chicago's fastest-growing tech consulting firm. I'd managed their branding, their client relationships, their corporate image, all while being the perfect corporate wife, hosting the dinner parties, attending the charity galas, and smiling beside Tom in every magazine feature about power. Couples shaping Chicago's business landscape. And how had he repaid my loyalty? By erasing me the moment I became inconvenient. I slipped into our bedroom, his bedroom now, I supposed, and locked the door, sliding down against it until I sat on the floor. I needed to think. I needed a plan. But most importantly, I needed an ally. He did what? Michelle's voice exploded through my phone 20 minutes later. My best friend since college didn't bother hiding her outrage. Tell me you're joking, Jen. I wish I were, I replied, keeping my voice low. Tom was still on his call, laughing occasionally at something Rebecca said. Each laugh felt like a knife between my ribs. Apparently, I'm already divorced. I just didn't get the memo. That's not even legal, Michelle said. I could picture her pacing her downtown office, her legal background kicking into high gear. He can't just... Apparently he can if his golf buddy is Judge Hamilton, I replied. I heard him mention pulling strings. Michelle's silence spoke volumes. I'm coming over... No, wait. Don't let him know you know. Meet me at Lakeside Coffee in an hour. Can you get out without him noticing? He thinks I'm resting. Doctor's orders. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tom had been so solicitous about my recovery needs while simultaneously destroying my life. Good. Keep it that way. And Jen? Michelle paused. Bring whatever financial documents you can access without raising suspicion. I ended the call and took a deep breath. The Jennifer Wilson who had entered the hospital 6 months ago, trusting, devoted, naive, had died somewhere during treatment. The woman who emerged was someone else entirely, someone who wouldn't go down without a fight. I waited until Tom's study door opened and his footsteps moved toward the kitchen before I made my move. Opening his filing cabinet with the key he thought I didn't know about, I quickly photographed bank statements, property records, and company documents. My hands trembled slightly. Whether from lingering weakness or surging adrenaline, I couldn't tell. Behind the most recent statements, I found a folder labeled Divorce in Tom's neat handwriting. Inside was a complete record of his betrayal. Court documents showing a divorce granted on grounds of irreconcilable differences, with a judge's signature dated 3 weeks ago. Attached was a property settlement that left me with practically nothing from our 12-year marriage, a settlement I had supposedly agreed to while heavily medicated in the hospital. My forged signature looked nothing like my handwriting. I heard the refrigerator door close in the kitchen and quickly replaced everything, locking the cabinet. When Tom appeared in the doorway, I was innocently looking through a magazine on the sofa. "Hey there," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Should you be up? The doctor said rest was critical for the next few weeks." "Just stretching my legs," I replied, matching his fake smile with one of my own. "Actually," Michelle texted, "she wants to drop by to see me. I thought I might meet her for coffee instead. Get some fresh air." A flicker of concern crossed his face. "Are you sure that's wise? You're still recovering." "It's just down the block," I assured him. "The walk will do me good. Unless there's some reason you don't want me leaving the house." Tom's expression shifted, relief replacing his momentary panic. No, of course not. Just worried about you, that's all. Take your time with Michelle. I have a conference call anyway." "With Rebecca, no doubt." I nodded and began gathering my things, moving slowly, playing the part of the weakened wife. Inside, the fire was growing, warming my cold extremities, bringing color back to my pallid cheeks. "Don't wait up if I'm late," Tom called as I reached the door, too preoccupied with his phone to look at me directly. "I might meet some of the team for drinks later." "Of course," I replied softly. "Enjoy your evening." The team. Was that what he called Rebecca now? Michelle was already waiting when I arrived at the coffee shop, a serious-looking man in a crisp suit beside her. She rushed to embrace me, her familiar perfume bringing unexpected tears to my eyes. "Jen, this is Daniel Chen," she said, gesturing to her companion. "He's a forensic accountant. We went to law school together." Daniel nodded solemnly. "Michelle explained your situation. I'm sorry you're going through this." I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted from the short walk. "Thank you for meeting me so quickly." "Time is critical in cases like yours," Daniel replied, opening his laptop. "If your husband has hidden assets or transferred them fraudulently, we need to act fast." As I shared what I'd discovered and showed them the photos I'd taken, Michelle's expression darkened. Daniel's fingers flew across his keyboard, making notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions about accounts or property. "This isn't just unethical, it's criminal," Michelle finally said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "He forged your signature while you were undergoing cancer treatment. That's fraud, plain and simple. Not to mention potential financial misconduct with the company," Daniel added, pointing to some numbers on his screen. "These transactions during your illness, large sums moved to new accounts right after you were hospitalized. That timing isn't coincidental." I stared at my untouched coffee, trying to process everything. "What's my next move? File for an annulment of the divorce? Sue him?" Michelle and Daniel exchanged glances. "We could," Michelle said slowly. "And we will. Eventually, but first we follow the money," Daniel finished, "because something bigger is happening here. These transfers, the timing of everything. Tom's not just leaving you, he's preparing Horizon Solutions for something major." My phone vibrated with a text from Tom. "Working late. Don't wait up." Of course he was. "I need to know everything," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "About Tom, about Rebecca, about what's happening with Horizon. Knowledge is power, right?" Daniel nodded. "And based on what I'm seeing in these preliminary numbers, your husband has been very busy consolidating his power while you were sick." "Then it's time I got busy too," I replied. Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained an elaborate charade. To Tom, I was the recovering cancer patient, grateful for his support, oblivious to his betrayal. I rested when he was home, took my medications on schedule, and never questioned his increasingly frequent late nights at the office. Behind the scenes, I was building my case and my strength. Michelle connected me with Olivia Thompson, a cutthroat divorce attorney who specialized in high-profile financial cases. Daniel continued his forensic investigation into Horizon's finances, uncovering a pattern of suspicious activities dating back to shortly after my diagnosis. Most valuably, I reconnected with Robert Jenkins, Horizon's former CFO who had mysteriously resigned 3 months into my treatment. "I always wondered why Tom pushed me out so suddenly," Robert said when we met discreetly at Michelle's apartment. He spread financial reports across her dining table, pointing to highlighted sections. "Now it makes sense. I was asking too many questions about these new accounts and these investor meetings that weren't on the official calendar." "What kind of meetings?" I asked, scanning the documents. "Private equity discussions. Talks about selling controlling interest in Horizon." Robert looked up, his expression grim. "Tom's planning to sell the company, Jen." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The company you both built. And based on these valuations, he's significantly undervaluing it to push the deal through quickly. The pieces clicked together. To someone connected to Rebecca, I'm guessing. Robert nodded. Rebecca Parker. She's not just his girlfriend, she's a principal at Axion Ventures. They specialize in acquiring promising tech companies, stripping them for assets, and dissolving what remains. My blood ran cold. Tom wasn't just betraying me. He was betraying everyone at Horizon. All the employees who had worked tirelessly to build something meaningful. All the clients who trusted us to help grow their businesses. "When is this sale supposed to happen?" Michelle asked. "Based on these timeline documents," Robert replied, "they're aiming to announce at the quarterly investor meeting, 3 weeks from now." I stood and walked to Michelle's window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, Tom and Rebecca were celebrating what they thought was their perfect plan. Get rid of the sick wife, sell the company for a quick profit, and ride off into the sunset together. "Not if I can help it," I whispered. Daniel arrived an hour later with more findings. "Your husband made a critical mistake," he said, unable to hide his satisfaction. "When he removed your name from the main company holdings, he forgot about the shell company you both created in the early days, Willstar Enterprises." I remembered it vaguely, a legal entity we'd established when first securing investors for Horizon. We'd barely used it after the initial funding round. "Technically," Daniel continued, "Willstar still owns 22% of Horizon's preferred shares. And guess who's still listed as the controlling partner of Willstar?" For the first time since discovering Tom's betrayal, I smiled. "Me." "Exactly. He never transferred those shares because he probably forgot they existed. They've been dormant for years." Olivia, who had joined our growing strategy session, tapped her pen against her legal pad. 22% isn't controlling interest, but it's enough to cause problems for his sale, especially if we can rally other investors to your side. "We need more than that," I said, my marketing brain kicking into high gear. "We need to stop this sale completely." "How?" Robert asked. "Even with your shares, Tom has the board's support. They trust him." "Then we need to give them a reason not to," I replied. "And I think I know how." The next morning, I called Tom from my doctor's appointment, actually a meeting with a private investigator Michelle had hired. "The doctor says I'm recovering better than expected," I told him, infusing my voice with hopeful enthusiasm. "I might even be able to start working part-time soon." "That's great," Tom replied, hesitation clear in his voice. "But there's no rush, Jen. The company's doing fine without you stressing about work." "I'm sure it is," I thought bitterly. Actually, I was thinking I could help with preparations for the quarterly investor meeting, like I always used to do. A long pause followed. Let's see how you're feeling closer to the date, he deflected. It's still 3 weeks away. Of course, I agreed pleasantly. Oh, and Tom? I was thinking of stopping by the office today, just to say hello to everyone. It's been so long. No. The sharpness in his voice was revealing. I mean, it's not a good day. Everyone's busy with the Marshall Project, and you know how chaotic that can get. Let me plan something proper for your return, maybe next week. Whatever you think best, I replied, ending the call. The private investigator raised an eyebrow. He's definitely hiding something at that office. Yes, I agreed. Her name is Rebecca Parker. That afternoon, while Tom thought I was at physical therapy, the PI and I sat in a cafe across from Horizon's gleaming office tower, watching through high-powered lenses as Rebecca Parker exited the building. Even from a distance, I could see why Tom had fallen for her. Perfectly styled blonde hair, designer suit, confident stride. She's been in the building for 3 hours, the PI noted. And according to my source in the building, she's been using the executive conference room like she already owns the place. Soon she will, I replied. Unless we move quickly. The next phase of our plan required delicate timing. While continuing my recovery charade with Tom, I worked with Robert to quietly contact key Horizon investors and clients. We couldn't reveal everything yet, but we planted seeds of concern about rumors of a potential sale. Meanwhile, Daniel followed the money trail, documenting every questionable transaction. Olivia prepared legal documents challenging the validity of my divorce, citing fraud and undue influence, while simultaneously asserting my rights as Willstar's controlling partner. 2 weeks before the investor meeting, I made my first major move. Using funds Michelle had helped me secure through a personal loan against my Willstar shares, I made an offer on a small but significant package of Horizon shares that had recently become available on the market. Tom called almost immediately, after the purchase cleared. "Did you buy Horizon shares today?" he demanded, skipping any greeting. "Hello to you too," I replied calmly, my heart racing despite my composed voice. "Yes, I did. Dr. Reynolds suggested I find productive ways to occupy my mind during recovery. I thought investing in my husband's company showed good faith." "Through an anonymous holding company?" His voice was tight, controlled. I feigned confusion. "The broker suggested it for privacy. Is something wrong, Tom? It's not a large position, just 5%. No, he backpedaled. "It's fine. I was just surprised. We should discuss major financial decisions first, that's all." The irony of his statement was almost laughable. "Like divorce proceedings?" I nearly asked. Instead, I simply agreed and changed the subject. 5% wasn't much, but combined with my hidden 22%, I now controlled enough shares to demand attention at the upcoming meeting. More importantly, my purchase had clearly rattled Tom, making him wonder what else I might know. The final week before the investor meeting brought increased tension. Tom spent almost every night at the office, barely bothering to invent excuses anymore. I used the freedom to meet with my growing team of allies and finalize our strategy. Axions. Offer is problematic even beyond the personal betrayal, Robert explained during our last planning session. Their history shows they typically lay off 70% of staff within 6 months of acquisition. Which would devastate our people, I added. Many of Horizon's employees had been with us since the beginning. They were family. We've confirmed that Tom has been presenting artificially deflated projections to justify the low valuation, Daniel said, sliding documents across the table. Meanwhile, Horizon's actual performance this quarter is exceptional. And I've secured statements from 3 board members expressing concern once they learned about these discrepancies, Michelle added. They're not ready to move against Tom publicly, but they won't support him if challenged directly. I reviewed our battle plan one final time. Everyone knows their role? Once this starts, we'll have to move quickly. Nods around the table. After weeks of preparation, we were as ready as we'd ever be. The night before the investor meeting, Tom surprised me by coming home early, carrying takeout from my favorite restaurant. "I thought we should celebrate," he said, setting out containers. On our dining table. "Your recovery is going so well." I watched him carefully, noting the tension in his shoulders despite his cheerful tone. "Any other reason to celebrate?" He hesitated slightly. "Just feeling optimistic about the company. Tomorrow's meeting should bring some exciting developments." "I'm looking forward to it," I said truthfully, raising my water glass. "To new beginnings." Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps even a touch of guilt, before he clinked his wine glass against mine. To new beginnings. If only he knew what kind of beginning tomorrow would bring. The Horizon Solutions Quarterly Investor meeting was held in the Grand Ballroom of the Peninsula Chicago, a venue Tom had always preferred for its impression of success and stability. I arrived early, dressed in a conservative suit that hid how much weight I'd lost during treatment. Michelle and Olivia flanked me, while Daniel and Robert would arrive separately to avoid raising suspicion. Tom's face when he saw me walk in was almost worth everything I'd endured. Shock, then alarm, quickly masked by a public show of delight. "Jennifer!" he exclaimed, rushing to my side. "What a wonderful surprise. I didn't think you'd feel up to attending." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, smiling for the benefit of the investors watching our reunion. "Especially given the day's agenda." His smile faltered slightly. "You know about the announcement?" "I make it my business to know everything about Horizon," I said simply. "It's as much my company as yours, after all." Before he could respond, Rebecca Parker approached, stopping short when she saw me. She recovered quickly, extending her hand. "Mrs. Wilson, what a pleasure to finally meet. You? I'm Rebecca Parker from Axion Ventures. Your husband has told me so much about you." I doubted that very much. "Funny, he's never mentioned you." I shook her hand firmly, noting how she flinched slightly at my direct gaze. "But I've recently learned quite a bit about you and Axion. Fascinating business model you have." Tom placed his hand on my elbow, his grip tight. "Jen, let me get you settled at our table. The meeting will be starting soon." As he led me away, he leaned close, whispering, urgently, "What are you doing? This is an important day." "It certainly is," I agreed pleasantly. "Perhaps the most important of your career." The meeting began conventionally enough. Quarterly reports, projections, minor announcements. I sat quietly beside Tom at the main table, watching Rebecca and her Axion colleagues exchange confident glances from their prime position near the front. Finally, Tom stood to make the announcement everyone was waiting for. "Before I share our exciting news," he began, his practiced charm on full display, "I want to thank my wife, Jennifer, for being here today despite her recent health challenges." Sympathetic murmurs rippled through the room as all eyes turned to me. I nodded graciously, playing my part. "Her presence reminds me of how we built Horizon Solutions together, from nothing into the company you see today," Tom continued, his hypocrisy breathtaking. "And it's with an eye toward Horizon's continued growth that I'm pleased to announce we've received an acquisition offer from Axion Ventures." Polite applause followed as Tom gestured toward Rebecca, who stood and smiled, confidently. "This partnership will allow Horizon to expand into new markets while maintaining our commitment to excellence." While maintaining our commitment to excellence. A clever way of disguising that Axion would gut the company within months. "The details of the offer have been provided in your packets," Tom continued. "We'll be voting to approve this transition at the conclusion of today's meeting." My moment had arrived. I raised my hand, the gesture so unexpected that Tom had no choice but to acknowledge me. "Yes, Jennifer. Did you have a question?" His smile remained fixed, but his eyes conveyed clear warning. I stood slowly, making sure I had everyone's attention before speaking. "Not a question, Tom. A correction." I turned to address the room. "As many of you know, I've been away from Horizon while undergoing cancer treatment. What you may not know is that during that time, significant changes have occurred without proper board oversight or shareholder notification." Tom stepped toward me, alarm visible now. "Jennifer, this isn't the appropriate forum." "I believe it's exactly the right forum," I countered, my voice stronger than it had been in months. "These investors deserve to know several critical facts before voting. First, the Axion offer substantially undervalues Horizon based on our actual performance metrics, not the adjusted figures presented in your packets." Murmurs spread through the room as Robert began distributing alternative financial reports to key investors. "Second," I continued, "Axion's business history suggests their interest is not in growing Horizon, but in liquidating its most valuable assets and eliminating the majority of its workforce." Rebecca stood now, her professional demeanor cracking. "These are baseless accusations. Axion has a proven track record of dismantling companies," I finished for her. "Yes, we're all aware of your track record, Ms. Parker. Just as we're now aware of your personal relationship with my husband, which began shortly after my cancer diagnosis and has created a significant conflict of interest in these negotiations." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Tom grabbed my arm, his fingers digging painfully into my skin. "Stop this now," he hissed. I pulled away from his grip. "And finally, most importantly, this entire acquisition process is legally compromised because Tom Wilson has committed fraud." Olivia stood then, handing documents to the board chairman. "These papers demonstrate that Mr. Wilson obtained a fraudulent divorce from Mrs. Wilson while she was hospitalized, then attempted to remove her ownership interests in Horizon without her knowledge or consent." The chairman's face darkened as he reviewed the documents. "Is this true, Tom?" Tom's composure finally shattered. "This is a private matter that has no bearing on today's business." "It has every bearing," I countered, "because I remain the controlling partner of Willstar Enterprises, which holds 22% of Horizon's preferred shares. Combined with my recent market acquisitions, I control sufficient interest to block this sale." Rebecca's face had gone pale. "Tom, you said this was handled," she hissed, loud enough for nearby investors to hear. The meeting devolved into chaos. After that, the board chairman called for an immediate recess. Investors clustered in concerned groups, reviewing the documents Robert and Olivia had provided. Tom and Rebecca huddled with Axion executives, their expressions grim. Michelle squeezed my hand under the table. "You did it," she whispered. "Look at them scrambling." I took a deep breath, feeling lightheaded from the confrontation. It's not over yet. When the meeting reconvened an hour later, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The board chairman spoke first, his tone formal. "After reviewing the concerning information presented, the board has voted to postpone any decision on the Axion acquisition pending a full investigation into the allegations raised today." He turned to Tom. "Furthermore, the board has voted to temporarily suspend Thomas Wilson from his duties as CEO until these matters are resolved." Tom stood, his face flushed with anger. "This is absurd. You can't." "We can and we have," the chairman interrupted. "The bylaws are clear regarding conflicts of interest and fiduciary duty." I watched Tom's perfect plan crumble before his eyes. Rebecca and the Axion team were already leaving, distancing themselves from the growing scandal. Board members who had once laughed at Tom's jokes now avoided his gaze. As the meeting concluded, I approached Tom one last time. He stood, alone near the podium, straightening papers with shaking hands. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked without looking up. "How did you find out?" "I heard you on the phone the day after I came home from the hospital," I replied simply. You were too busy gloating to notice me in the doorway." He finally met my eyes, his expression a mixture of anger and grudging respect. "I never thought you'd fight back like this. Not after everything you've been through." "That was your mistake," I said, my voice steady. "You saw my illness as weakness. I found strength I never knew I had." 3 months later, I sat in what had once been Tom's office at Horizon Solutions, reviewing quarterly projections with our executive team. After a thorough investigation confirmed all my allegations, the board had voted unanimously to appoint me as CEO. Tom had eventually agreed to a settlement rather than face criminal fraud charges. The legitimate divorce that followed gave me control of our assets, including the lakefront condo I had sold immediately. Too many painful memories in those walls. As for Rebecca and Axion, they had retreated quickly once their predatory acquisition strategy was exposed in the financial press. Several other companies they had targeted subsequently scrutinized their offers more carefully, damaging Axion's reputation in the industry. Michelle knocked on my open door, smiling broadly. "Ready for your interview? The reporter from Business Chicago is waiting in the conference room." I nodded, closing my laptop. The magazine wanted to feature Horizon's remarkable turnaround, and my journey from marketing executive to cancer survivor to CEO. "One last thing," Michelle said, handing me a large envelope. "The final dissolution papers for Willstar Enterprises. Once you sign, the shares transfer directly to you. No more shell companies, no more hidden ownership." I signed my name, my real signature, in my own hand, on the documents, the name I had reclaimed along with my power. Horizon Solutions announces expansion into 3 new markets, read the headline on the business journal lying on my desk. My journey from betrayal to triumph had come full circle. The company Tom had tried to sell out from under me was now thriving under my leadership, its workforce secure, its future bright. I touched the small scar on my wrist where my hospital bracelet had once been, a reminder of battles fought and won, both against cancer and against betrayal. In trying to erase me from my own life, Tom had inadvertently pushed me to become stronger than I'd ever thought possible. Sometimes the most devastating blows reveal our greatest strengths. I had lost a husband but found myself, and that was a trade I would make again without hesitation. In the days that followed my discovery, I moved through our penthouse like a ghost, careful to maintain the facade of the oblivious recovering wife. Each morning, I'd smile weakly at Tom as he brought me tea and my medication, thanking him for his thoughtfulness while silently cataloging his betrayals. Each evening, I'd listen to his fabricated stories about late meetings while knowing he was with Rebecca, planning their future on the ashes of mine. The performance was exhausting, but necessary. I needed time to gather evidence, time to understand the full scope of what I was facing, and most importantly, time to regain my strength. "Your white blood cell count is improving," Dr. Sharma told me during my follow-up appointment, which I'd insisted on attending alone despite Tom's protests. "But I'm concerned about your weight loss and these stress indicators in your blood work." I stared at the clinical white walls of the examination room, weighing how much to reveal. "I've had some personal challenges recently." Dr. Sharma set down her clipboard, her expression softening. "Jennifer, as your doctor, I need to know anything that might affect your recovery. Cancer treatment isn't just about medication. Your emotional well-being directly impacts your physical healing." Something in her compassionate gaze broke through my carefully constructed walls. "My husband divorced me while I was undergoing chemotherapy," I said, the words tasting bitter. "He forged my signature on the papers. I only discovered it 3 days ago." Dr. Sharma's professional composure slipped momentarily, shock and outrage, flashing across her face before she regained control. "I see." She made some notes in my file. "That explains the elevated cortisol levels. Have you considered speaking with our oncology social worker? Or perhaps legal counsel?" "I have a lawyer," I assured her, and friends helping me. I just need to keep up appearances a little longer. She looked up sharply. You're still living with him? Jennifer, that level of stress could seriously compromise your recovery. I know, but leaving now would alert him before I'm ready. I twisted the wedding ring I still wore for show. Once I understand exactly what he's done, I'll make my move. Dr. Sharma reluctantly nodded, then wrote something on a prescription pad. This is for a mild anti-anxiety medication, only if you need it. And this, she wrote on another pad, is my personal cell number. Day or night, if things escalate, call me. I tucked both papers into my purse, oddly touched by this unexpected alliance. Thank you. One more thing, she added as I prepared to leave. I'm ordering additional blood tests today and scheduling you for weekly visits instead of monthly. If anyone asks, we're monitoring a concerning pattern in your test results. I understood immediately. She was giving me a medical reason for frequent appointments, time away from Tom's watchful eye. Is there actually something concerning in my results? Only the effects of emotional trauma, she replied grimly. Which is reason enough. When I returned home, Tom was waiting, his expression a carefully calibrated mix of concern and affection. How was the appointment? Everything okay? I handed him the lab orders. Dr. Sharma is concerned about some irregularities. She wants to monitor me more closely for a while. His brow furrowed as he scanned the paper. Nothing serious, I hope? Just a precaution, I assured him, watching his reaction carefully. Was that relief or disappointment flickering behind his eyes? Had he been hoping the cancer would solve his problem permanently? The thought chilled me. Well, whatever you need, he said, squeezing my shoulder in what once would have felt like a comforting gesture. Now his touch made my skin crawl. I'm here for you. The lie hung between us, almost tangible in its audacity. That afternoon, while Tom was supposedly at the office, I met with Michelle and Daniel at a small cafe several neighborhoods away from our usual haunts. Daniel had made significant progress tracking Tom's financial maneuvers. He's been systematically moving assets for months, Daniel explained, spreading printouts across our table. First, he transferred your joint savings into an account solely in his name, claiming medical necessity according to the bank records, probably saying he needed access for your treatment costs. Michelle pointed to another document. Then, he remortgaged your vacation property in Michigan without your signature, taking out a substantial equity loan. How is that even possible? I asked, staring at the unfamiliar signatures that were supposed to be mine. His golf buddy Judge Hamilton again, Michelle replied grimly. The notary who verified these documents works in Hamilton's office. She's already agreed to cooperate with us after we showed her the real samples of your signature. The funds from these transactions have been moved through several accounts, Daniel continued, ultimately landing here. He pointed to a highlighted company name, Titan Holdings LLC. What's Titan Holdings? I asked, the name unfamiliar. Daniel's expression tightened. A shell company Rebecca Parker created 2 months after your diagnosis. And here's where it gets interesting. Titan has been quietly purchasing small blocks of Horizon Solutions stock whenever they become available. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They're trying to gain controlling interest in the company. Michelle nodded grimly. Classic hostile takeover strategy, except it's not so hostile when the CEO is helping from the inside. I stared at the documents, memories flashing through my mind. Late-night strategy sessions in our living room when Horizon was just starting. The mortgage we'd taken on our first small apartment to fund initial operations. Countless client dinners where I'd charmed potential investors while Tom closed the deals. Horizon wasn't just a company. It was our creation, our shared dream. What percentage do they control now? I asked, a plan beginning to form in my mind. Based on public records, Titan currently holds about 17% of outstanding shares. Daniel, I replied. Combined with Tom's personal 31%, they're close to a majority. Not close enough, I murmured, my marketing executive mind clicking into high gear. Not yet, anyway. Michelle leaned forward. What are you thinking, Jen? I'm thinking we need more information about Rebecca Parker and Axion Ventures, I replied. And we need it before their next move. Daniel was already typing on his laptop. I'll dig deeper into Axion's previous acquisitions, look for patterns. And I'll reach out to some contacts at the Bar Association, Michelle added. See if anyone has insight into Judge Hamilton's connection to Tom beyond golf buddies. I pulled out my phone, hesitating briefly before making the call I'd been considering since discovering Tom's betrayal. I need to contact someone who might have valuable information, but it could be complicated. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Jennifer Wilson. I was wondering when you'd call. Hello, Margaret, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I think we need to talk. Margaret Chen had been Horizon's original office manager, hired when the company consisted of just Tom, me, and 2 developers working out of a converted warehouse space. She'd been with us for 10 years before abruptly retiring 6 months ago, right around the time of my diagnosis. I'd always found the timing strange, but had been too ill to investigate. We arranged to meet at her apartment in Evanston, away from anyone who might recognize me. Michelle insisted on driving me, concerned about my still fragile health. Are you sure about this? She asked as we navigated through midday traffic. Margaret left on good terms, didn't she? That's what Tom told me, I replied, watching the city slip past my window. But something about her departure never felt right. She loved Horizon. It was like family to her. Margaret's apartment was modest but impeccably maintained, filled with the art pieces she'd collected during her travels. She opened the door before we could knock, her sharp eyes assessing my appearance with concern. You look terrible, she said bluntly, ushering us inside. Sit down before you fall down. Tea? I smiled despite myself, having missed Margaret's no-nonsense approach. Tea would be wonderful. Once we were settled in her small living room, Margaret addressed the elephant in the room. I've been following the business news. Axion Ventures has been circling Horizon like vultures. Now I understand why. You knew? I asked, not entirely surprised. Margaret snorted. Not the full extent, but enough to know something wasn't right. Why do you think I retired? Tom gave me a choice. Leave quietly with a generous package or face age discrimination allegations. Michelle sat forward. He forced you out? After I questioned some unusual financial reports and Rebecca Parker's increasingly frequent presence at executive meetings. Margaret's eyes narrowed. I started documenting discrepancies, gathering copies of suspicious transactions. Tom caught me accessing files I supposedly had no business seeing. I felt a surge of vindication. Did you keep those documents? A sly smile spread across Margaret's face as she rose and moved to a bookshelf, pulling out what appeared to be a photo album. 30 years in business administration teaches you to always keep receipts, literal and figurative. The photo album contained meticulously organized copies of emails, financial records, and meeting notes, all chronicling the early stages of Tom's betrayal, both of me and of Horizon itself. This is dated 2 weeks after my diagnosis, I said, pointing to an email exchange between Tom and Rebecca discussing contingency plans for Horizon's leadership. They wasted no time, Margaret confirmed grimly. Once you were in treatment, Tom began restructuring executive responsibilities, diluting Robert Jenkins's authority as CFO, bringing in consultants aligned with Axion. Michelle was photographing key documents with her phone. This is extremely helpful, Ms. Chen. Would you be willing to make a formal statement for our attorney? I've been waiting for someone to ask, Margaret replied, her expression hardening. Tom Wilson didn't just betray his wife, he betrayed everything Horizon was supposed to stand for. As we prepared to leave, Margaret pulled me aside. "There's something else you should know?" Robert Jenkins didn't resign voluntarily either. He was asking too many questions about the same transactions I flagged. I absorbed this new information, feeling both overwhelmed and increasingly determined. "Do you know how to reach him?" "Last I heard, he was consulting for startups in the West Loop," Margaret said, writing down a number. "He never cashed out. His founder's shares in Horizon. He might be a valuable ally." Back in Michelle's car, I leaned my head against the window, exhaustion washing over me. Fighting cancer had depleted my physical reserves. Fighting Tom was draining what little energy I had left. "We don't have to do everything today," Michelle said gently, noticing my fatigue. "This is a marathon, not a sprint." "That's the problem," I replied. "We don't know how much time we have before Tom and Rebecca make their next move." My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Where are you? Called Dr. Sharma's office about your test results. They said you left hours ago." My stomach tightened. He was checking up on me, verifying my movements. He's getting suspicious. Michelle glanced at the message. "We need to get you somewhere safe, Jen. You can stay with me." "Not yet," I said, quickly composing a response to Tom. "Ran into old friend from college. Lost track of time. Heading home now." "If he's monitoring your movements, the situation is escalating," Michelle argued. "It's not safe." "3 more days," I insisted. "Daniel needs time to trace all the financial connections, and we need to contact Robert Jenkins. Once we have the full picture, I'll leave." Michelle reluctantly agreed, dropping me off 2 blocks from my building so I could walk in as if I'd taken a short stroll, a plausible activity for my recovery schedule. Tom was waiting in the living room, trying to appear casual but betrayed by the tension in his shoulders. "Good walk?" "Refreshing," I replied, hanging up my coat. "Though, I might have pushed myself too far. I'm feeling a bit tired." His expression softened slightly, professional concern replacing suspicion. "You should rest. Your recovery has to be the priority." The irony of his feigned concern was almost laughable. I nodded agreeably and retreated to our bedroom, locking the door under the pretense of changing clothes. Once alone, I quickly texted Daniel. "Tom checking my movements. Timeline accelerated. Need everything you can get on Axion and Rebecca ASAP." That night, I pretended to sleep while Tom worked, late in his home office. When I heard him finally go to bed in the guest room, his chosen sleeping arrangement since my return from the hospital, supposedly to avoid disturbing my rest, I slipped out to access his laptop. The password had changed from our anniversary date to something new. After 2 failed attempts, I paused, heart racing. One more wrong guess would likely trigger a security alert. What would Tom choose as his new password? Something related to Rebecca? To Axion? On a hunch, I typed Titan 2023, combining the shell company name with the current year. The desktop appeared, and I had to suppress a bitter laugh at the predictability of his deception. Even in betrayal, Tom remained methodical, systematic. I quickly connected the small USB drive Daniel had provided, running the specialized program he'd installed to copy Tom's recent files without leaving digital traces. The process would take about 20 minutes. 20 minutes of sitting in near darkness, listening for any sound that might indicate Tom was awake. While the program ran, I carefully searched the papers on Tom's desk, photographing anything relevant with my phone. A handwritten note caught my attention, meeting agenda items for something called Operation Phoenix, scheduled for the following week. The items included finalized Titan acquisition strategy and prepare board announcement. They were moving faster than we'd anticipated. Whatever Tom and Rebecca were planning, it was imminent. The USB drive blinked, indicating the copying was complete. I carefully removed it, returned everything to its exact position, and slipped. Back to our bedroom, heart pounding. Sleep was impossible after that. I lay awake plotting my next moves, feeling like a spy in my own home. The woman I'd been a year ago, trusting, supportive, naive Jennifer, seemed like a stranger now. Cancer and betrayal had forged someone new from those ashes, someone harder, more calculating, and increasingly determined not just to survive, but to win. Morning brought new challenges. Tom announced over breakfast that he'd arranged for a home health aide to help with my recovery. "That's not necessary," I protested, immediately suspicious. "I'm managing fine." "You were exhausted after a simple walk yesterday," he countered smoothly. "And with my schedule getting busier, I want to make sure someone's here for you. Mrs. Davis comes highly recommended. She'll start tomorrow." The message was clear. I would now be supervised, my movements monitored even more closely. Tom was tightening the net, perhaps sensing my investigations. I forced a grateful smile. How thoughtful. Though I hope she doesn't mind if I still attend my doctor's appointments and support group. "Of course not," Tom replied, his own smile not quite reaching his eyes. "She'll drive you wherever you need to go." As soon as Tom left for the office, I called Michelle in a panic. "He's having me watched. Some home health aide starting tomorrow." "That confirms it. He's suspicious," Michelle replied. "We need to move you out today, Jen." "This isn't a negotiation anymore." "I can't just disappear," I argued. "He'd immediately know something's wrong and might accelerate whatever he's planning." After some debate, we compromised. I would stay one more night, but prepare an emergency. Exit strategy. Meanwhile, Daniel would analyze the files copied from Tom's computer, and Michelle would attempt to contact Robert Jenkins. I spent the day carefully gathering essential documents and medications, hiding a small go bag in the back of my closet where Tom never looked. I also transferred personal mementos and irreplaceable items to a secure location via a delivery service while Tom was at work. That evening, as I prepared a simple dinner, maintaining my role as recovering wife, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Jennifer, this is Robert Jenkins. Michelle Baker contacted me. We need to talk urgently about Horizon. Can you meet tomorrow?" I quickly responded, suggesting my doctor's appointment as cover, the one legitimate reason I could evade the soon-to-arrive health aide. Tom arrived home later than usual, looking distracted and slightly agitated. "Change of plans for tomorrow," he announced, loosening his tie. "I'll take you to your doctor's appointment myself." My stomach dropped. "That's not necessary. I know how busy you are with work." "Nothing's more important than your health," he insisted with that practiced sincerity that had once seemed so genuine. "Besides, I have some questions for Dr. Sharma about your recovery timeline." The implication was clear. He was checking my story, verifying whether I actually had increased appointments. Perhaps he'd already called the office and become suspicious. When they confirmed my visit without explaining the supposed concerning test results. "That's very thoughtful," I replied, mind racing to develop an alternative plan. Though I'd planned to go to my support group afterward, the one for cancer survivors at the wellness center. Tom hesitated, clearly not having anticipated this complication. "I suppose I could drop you there after the appointment and pick you up when it's finished." "Perfect," I agreed, already texting Michelle under the table. "Change of plans. Need new meeting location for RJ. Tom escorting me to doctor." While Tom showered, I received Daniel's preliminary analysis of the copied files. Operation Phoenix is a complete restructuring of Horizon. Plan to sell to Axion, lay off 60% of staff, liquidate core assets. Timeline shows board presentation next week. The pieces were falling into place with alarming speed. Whatever window we had for action was rapidly closing. I needed to speak with Robert Jenkins immediately and finalize our counter strategy. My phone buzzed with Michelle's response. "New plan set. Doctor knows situation. Will help. RJ will meet. At Wellness Center during actual support group. I'll be there too." At least one thing was working in our favor. Dr. Sharma had become an unexpected but valuable ally. I just had to get through the doctor's appointment with Tom before I could meet Robert and continue piecing together our defense. That night, I barely slept, hyper-aware of every sound in the penthouse, half expecting Tom to burst in and confront me with evidence of my investigations. By morning, my nerves were frayed, and the dark circles under my eyes required extra concealer, though I could always attribute my haggard appearance to cancer recovery rather than mounting anxiety. Tom was solicitous during the drive to Dr. Sharma's office, asking about my symptoms and treatment side effects with seemingly genuine concern. Had I not seen the evidence of his betrayal with my own eyes, I might have been fooled by this performance. In the waiting room, my phone vibrated with a message from Daniel. Found something big. Axion's last 3 acquisitions resulted in company. Bankruptcies after asset stripping. Looks like they're setting up Horizon for same fate. I deleted the message immediately, knowing Tom might ask to use my phone or check it if left unattended. Mrs. Wilson? The nurse appeared, smiling professionally. Dr. Sharma will see you now. Tom stood to accompany me, but the nurse smoothly intercepted. I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson, but Dr. Sharma needs to conduct some sensitive examinations. She's asked to see Mrs. Wilson alone first, and will call you in afterward for discussion. I could see Tom wanted to protest, but was constrained by the public setting. Of course, I'll wait here. Once safely behind closed doors with Dr. Sharma, I exhaled in relief. Thank you. Michelle explained the situation, she replied, checking my blood pressure. It's actually dangerously high right now, not surprising given the circumstances. I need about 30 minutes, I explained. Tom's expecting to take me to a cancer support group at the wellness center after this. That's where I'm meeting a former colleague with critical information. Dr. Sharma nodded. I can keep him occupied with discussion of your treatment protocol and potential clinical trials. But Jennifer, her expression grew serious. You need to get out of this situation immediately. This level of stress will significantly impede your recovery. After today, I promised. Once I have what I need from Robert Jenkins, I'll go to Michelle's apartment. I already have an emergency bag packed. She seemed satisfied with this plan and proceeded with a legitimate examination, documenting my concerning vital signs and weight loss. These are real medical issues we need to address, she emphasized. Your body is fighting too many battles at once. After the examination, Dr. Sharma left me to dress while she invited Tom into her office. Through the thin walls, I could hear her serious, measured tones explaining complex treatment options and potential complications. A masterful performance of medical concern that would keep Tom occupied while giving me time to text Michelle. Appointment finishing soon. We'll arrive at Wellness Center in approximately 20 minutes. When I joined them, Tom was focused intently on a clinical trial brochure Dr. Sharma had provided, asking detailed questions about success rates and protocols. The doctor caught my eye briefly, giving me a subtle nod. As I was explaining to your husband, she said smoothly, these new treatment options show promise, but consistent monitoring is essential. I'd like to see you twice weekly for the next month. Whatever's necessary, Tom replied, clearly buying the medical pretense. Jennifer's health is our top priority. The drive to the wellness center was tense, with Tom periodically glancing at me with unreadable expressions. Was he suspicious of my abnormally quiet demeanor? Did he sense that something had changed? I can pick you up after your session, he offered as we pulled up to the modern glass building that housed various support groups and complementary therapy services. No need, I replied, trying to sound casual. Michelle mentioned she might attend today too. She can drive me home. This clearly wasn't part of Tom's plan, but he had limited options for objecting without seeming controlling. Text me when you're done, he finally said. And remember, Mrs. Davis starts tomorrow morning. I've already given her the door code. The implied threat was clear. My freedom was about to become even more restricted. I smiled and nodded, knowing this would be the last time Tom would dictate my movements. Inside the wellness center, Michelle was waiting by the reception desk, immediately taking my arm to steady me. "You look ready to collapse," she murmured, leading me toward a private consultation room. "Are you sure you're up for this?" "I don't have a choice," I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. "We're running. Out of time?" The man waiting in the consultation room was barely recognizable as Robert Jenkins, the once polished CFO who had helped build Horizon from startup to industry leader. His designer suits had been replaced by casual attire, his formerly clean-shaven face now sporting a neatly trimmed beard. But his sharp intelligence remained evident in his assessing gaze. "Jennifer?" he greeted me, genuine concern in his voice. I hardly know what to say. Michelle has filled me in on some of what's happening, but I still can't believe Tom would go this far. Neither could I admitted, sinking gratefully into a chair. But the evidence is irrefutable. Now we need to figure out how to stop him before he destroys Horizon completely. Robert pulled out his laptop, quickly accessing files he'd prepared. I've been tracking Horizon since my departure. The financial patterns became concerning about 4 months ago. Increased debt loads, unusual asset transfers, declining cash reserves despite record revenue. All preparations for Axion's acquisition, I noted, reviewing the spreadsheets he displayed. But why would Tom agree to essentially dismantle the company he built? "Money, primarily," Robert replied grimly. "Based on the structure of the deal I've been able to piece together from industry sources, Tom stands to receive approximately $40 million in consulting fees after the sale, while maintaining artificial leadership of what remains of Horizon during the transition period." "And Rebecca?" Michelle asked. "Commission on the deal as Axion's acquisition lead, plus likely promotion to partner." Robert's expression hardened. "They're dismantling a company with 300 employees for personal gain." I stared at the projections showing Horizon's likely fate after acquisition. Massive layoffs, intellectual property sold off piecemeal, client lists liquidated, eventually nothing remaining but a hollow shell. "We need to stop this," I said, determination hardening within me. "And I think I know how." Robert and Michelle leaned forward as I outlined my emerging plan. The wellness center's soft ambient music provided a strange backdrop for what amounted to corporate warfare strategy. "Willstar Enterprises," I said, watching recognition dawn in Robert's eyes. "The original holding company," he murmured, "from before the first round of venture funding." I nodded. Tom removed my name from everything he could think of: our personal accounts, properties, the main Horizon corporate structure. But Willstar was created when we first incorporated, before we had investors or employees. It still holds foundational patents and a significant chunk of original shares. Robert was already typing, accessing historical corporate documents. "You're right. According to the original formation documents, Willstar holds approximately 22% of Horizon's preferred stock. But surely Tom addressed this in the divorce proceedings." "That's just it," Michelle interjected, pulling out copies of the fraudulent divorce papers. "He never mentioned Willstar specifically. The property division refers to all interests in Horizon Solutions and related entities. But Willstar isn't named. And Jennifer never signed these papers. They're forged." "Which means," I continued, excitement building despite my fatigue, "I still legally control Willstar and its assets, including those shares. Combined with your founder's shares, Robert, and any others we can gather quickly, we might block this acquisition." Robert looked thoughtful. "My shares are about 5%, not enough on their own, but combined with Willstar's 22%. We'd need approximately 13% more to counter Tom's position," Michelle calculated. "Margaret Chen still holds her employee stock options," Robert recalled. "That's another 2-3%. And there's Jason Foreman, our first lead developer. Last I heard, he kept his founding shares out of principal, another 4-5%. Hope began to build as we identified potential allies among early Horizon employees and investors who might rally to save the company from Axion's destructive plans. "We need to move quickly," I emphasized. "According to the documents I found, the board presentation is scheduled for next week. Once Tom secures board approval, stopping this becomes exponentially more difficult. I can contact Jason and some of the other early team members," Robert offered. "They'll listen to me. But Jennifer, there's another angle we should consider." I raised an eyebrow questioningly. "The clients," Robert explained. "Horizon's value lies largely in its client relationships. If major clients learned about Axion's post-acquisition plans, they might withdraw their business, making the acquisition far less attractive." "That's risky," Michelle cautioned. "We'd need concrete evidence of Axion's intentions, not just suspicions." "Which is exactly what we have," I said, pulling out my phone to show them the photographs I'd taken of Tom's. "Operation Phoenix documents. These outline the post-acquisition layoffs and client portfolio liquidation plans." Robert studied the images, his expression hardening. "This directly contradicts what they're likely telling clients about the acquisition preserving Horizon's service quality. It's deliberately deceptive." "Legally actionable deception," Michelle added, her legal mind already assessing options. As we continued strategizing, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "How's the support group? Need me to pick you up after all?" I quickly responded with a casual message about connecting with other survivors and confirming Michelle would drive me home, but the interruption served as a stark reminder of my precarious situation. "I can't go back to the penthouse," I admitted. "Tom's hired someone to monitor me starting tomorrow. This may be my only chance to get away safely." Michelle nodded firmly. "You're staying with me, as we discussed. I've already prepared the guest room." "But Tom will know something's wrong the moment I don't come home," I pointed out. "Let him," Robert said, surprising me with his vehemence. "You need to protect yourself, Jennifer. I saw what Tom's capable of when he forced me out. The manipulation, the threats, and I wasn't dealing with cancer treatment at the time." His concern touched me. "Thank you, Robert. But if Tom suspects I'm working against him, he might accelerate his plans or take measures to block our access to Willstar's assets. Which is why we need to move simultaneously on multiple fronts," Robert replied. "While you formally assert your control over Willstar, I'll reach out to potential allies among shareholders and begin quietly approaching key clients with concerns about the acquisition's impact on their service agreements." Michelle added, "And I'll prepare the legal challenges to the fraudulent divorce, starting with a request for emergency injunctions against any major Horizon transactions pending resolution of the ownership disputes." For the first time since discovering Tom's betrayal, I felt something like optimism. We had a plan, tentative and risky, but a plan nonetheless. "There's one more critical piece," Robert said, his expression serious. "We need access to Horizon's current financial data, the real numbers, not what Tom's been presenting to the board. If Axion's deal is based on manipulated financials, we have additional grounds to challenge it." "The quarterly internal audit should be complete," I noted. "Normally, those reports would go directly to you, as CFO." "And now they go to Greg Phillips, Tom's hand-picked replacement," Robert replied with a grimace. "Who's almost certainly complicit in this scheme." I thought for a moment, then smiled slightly. "But they also go to Diane in accounting. She's been with Horizon since the early days, manages the audit team, and was always more loyal to the company than to any individual executive." Robert matched my smile with one of his own. "Diane Morris. Of course. She helped uncover the inconsistencies I was investigating before Tom forced me out. She might help us if approached carefully." As our strategy session concluded, we divided responsibilities and established secure communication channels. No emails or texts that could be monitored. No calls to phones that might be accessed by Tom or his allies. "One last thing," I said, as we prepared to leave. I need to retrieve some items from the penthouse without alerting Tom. Michelle frowned. That's too risky. Tell me what you need and I'll send someone. I shook my head firmly. There are documents in my personal safe, hidden in my closet. Tom doesn't know about it. And there's a backup drive with Original Horizon, design documents that might be crucial for establishing my role in the company's development. After considerable debate, we developed a compromise. I would return home with Michelle as if from the support group. While Tom was distracted, I would gather essential items, then leave with Michelle claiming a sudden invitation to her place for dinner. A plausible excuse that would get me out of the penthouse without raising immediate alarms. The plan worked, with surprising ease. Tom was on a video call when we arrived, barely acknowledging our entrance. I moved quietly to our bedroom, retrieved the hidden documents and drive, and added them to an overnight bag with the explanation that Michelle and I had decided on an impromptu girls' night to lift my spirits. That sounds nice, Tom said distractedly, clearly relieved not to have to maintain his caring husband facade for an evening. I have work to finish anyway. Call if you need anything. As Michelle drove us away from the building that had been my home for 7 years, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Grief for what I'd lost, fear of what lay ahead, but predominantly a growing sense of determination. Tom had betrayed not just me, but everything we'd built together. Everything. Horizon represented. You okay? Michelle asked gently, noticing my silence. No, I admitted, but I will be, after we stop him. Michelle's apartment was a comfortable 2-bedroom in Lincoln Park, tastefully decorated in her characteristic minimalist style. She showed me to her guest room, already prepared with fresh linens and basic toiletries. Home sweet home, at least. For now, she said. I've stocked the bathroom with your preferred brands, and there are some loose clothes in the dresser that should fit until we can get more of your things. I was touched by her thoughtfulness. Thank you. For everything. Save your thanks for when we've taken that bastard down, she replied with fierce loyalty. Now get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Sleep came surprisingly easily. That night, perhaps the relief of no longer maintaining pretenses, perhaps simple exhaustion catching up with me. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through unfamiliar curtains, and for a moment, I was disoriented. Then, reality crashed back. I was in Michelle's guest room. I had cancer. My husband had divorced me while I was undergoing treatment. He was selling our company to vulture capitalists, and today was the day we would begin fighting back. I reached for my phone, finding several missed calls and increasingly concerned texts from Tom, culminating in, starting to worry. Please confirm you're okay. Should I contact the hospitals? His apparent concern would have seemed touching once. Now it just felt calculated. He needed to maintain the appearance of the devoted husband until his plans were complete. I sent a brief reply. Sorry for not responding. Girl talk and wine led to oversleeping at Michelle's. We'll call later. Michelle was already up, coffee brewed, kitchen table transformed into an impromptu command center with her laptop, legal pads, and a printer churning out documents. Morning, she greeted me, sliding a mug of coffee my way. Robert's been busy. He's meeting with Jason Foreman this morning and has calls scheduled with 3 other original shareholders, and I've been drafting our legal filings. She handed me a thick document. This is the petition to invalidate the fraudulent divorce. We'll file it tomorrow after we've secured your position with Willstar. And this, she passed another document, is a temporary restraining order we'll seek against Tom, preventing him from making any major decisions regarding Horizon pending resolution of the ownership dispute. I sipped my coffee, impressed by how much she'd accomplished already. What's first on today's agenda? Willstar, she said decisively. We need to formally document your position as controlling partner and update all the necessary filings to ensure Tom can't claim the company. is inactive or defunct. Then we need to contact Diane in accounting, I added. The sooner we have accurate financial data, the stronger our position. The morning passed in a flurry of activity. We met with Michelle's colleague, a corporate attorney specializing in business ownership disputes, who helped prepare the necessary documentation to assert my control of Willstar Enterprises. By noon, the paperwork was filed, officially putting Tom on notice that his attempt to erase me from Horizon's ownership structure had failed. How long until he realizes what we've done? I asked as we left the attorney's office. The filings will be processed by tomorrow morning, and notices will be sent to all registered addresses associated with Horizon and Willstar, Michelle explained. Given Tom's vigilance about all things Horizon, I'd guess he'll know by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. Then we need to accomplish as much as possible before then, I said, checking my watch. Diane usually takes lunch at 1 p.m. We should try to meet her. Michelle looked concerned. Is it wise for you to go near Horizon's offices? Someone might recognize you and alert Tom. I considered this. You're right, but I need to speak with her directly. She won't share sensitive financial information without understanding why it's needed. We compromised, arranging to meet. Diane at a small cafe several blocks from Horizon's downtown offices, close enough for her to reach during her lunch break, but far enough to minimize the chance of being seen by Tom or his allies. Diane arrived precisely at 1:15, her practical, sensible pumps and meticulously organized planner exactly as I remembered. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Jennifer, I had no idea you'd be here. How are you feeling? She embraced me warmly, before taking a seat. Better than expected in some ways, I replied honestly. Diane, I need to ask you something important. But first, what have you been told about my absence from Horizon? She shifted uncomfortably. Tom said you were focusing entirely on your treatment and recovery, that you'd stepped away from all company involvement for health reasons. And has anything seemed unusual at Horizon lately? Diane's professional demeanor faltered slightly. You mean besides the constant closed-door meetings, the new consultants from Axion Ventures who seem to have full access to our financial data, and the rumors about a major announcement next week? Nothing unusual at all. Her sarcasm brought a smile to my face. The straightforward, no-nonsense accountant I remembered was still there. We don't have much time, I said, leaning forward. So I'll be direct. Tom is planning to sell Horizon to Axion Ventures, who will dismantle the company, liquidate its assets, and terminate most of the staff. And he's been manipulating financial reports to justify a lowball valuation. To her credit, Diane didn't look entirely surprised. I suspected something along those lines. The numbers haven't been adding up. Reported revenues suddenly don't match our actual bookings. Projected expenses are inflated, and asset valuations have been arbitrarily adjusted downward. We need the real numbers, Diane, I said. The actual financial position, not what Tom's been presenting to the board. Diane hesitated, conflict evident in her expression. That's proprietary information, Jennifer. Even as the CEO's wife, I'm more than just Tom's wife, I interrupted, sliding copies of the Willstar documentation across the table. I'm still a controlling partner in the original holding company that owns 22% of Horizon, and I have a legal and ethical obligation to ensure the company isn't being fraudulently devalued. She reviewed the documents carefully, her accountant's eye missing nothing. This appears legitimate, but why wouldn't Tom tell the board about your continued ownership interest? Michelle spoke up. Because Tom forged Jennifer's signature on divorce papers while she was undergoing cancer treatment, attempting to eliminate her from Horizon's ownership structure without her knowledge or consent. Diane's expression shifted from professional concern to personal outrage. He did what? The next hour was spent bringing Diane fully up to speed on Tom's betrayal and our counter-strategy. By the time she had to return to the office, she was firmly in our camp. I'll compile the accurate financial reports tonight and find a secure way to get them to you, she promised, gathering her things. And I'll discreetly speak with some of the other department heads who've been concerned about these consultants crawling through our data. As she stood to leave, she paused. Jennifer, for what it's worth, many of us at Horizon have missed your presence. The company hasn't been the same without you. Her words warmed me. Thank you, Diane. We're going to make sure Horizon survives. This, for everyone who's helped build it, not just for me. After Diane left, Michelle received a call from Robert with promising news. Jason Foreman had agreed to support our efforts, committing his 7% ownership stake to our coalition. 2 other early employees with smaller holdings had also responded, positively. We're up to about 33% combined, Michelle calculated after the call. Still not enough to counter Tom's position directly, but getting closer. And once we have the real financial data from Diane, we can start approaching major clients, I added. If enough of them express concerns about the acquisition, the board might reconsider regardless of share percentages. By late afternoon, exhaustion was catching up with me again. Dr. Sharma's warnings about stress impeding my recovery echoed in my mind as Michelle insisted I rest while she continued coordinating our growing coalition. I reluctantly retired to the guest room, intending just a short nap, but fell into a deep sleep almost immediately. When I woke, disoriented and groggy, the room was dark except for the city lights filtering through the curtains. My phone showed. It was nearly 9 p.m. I'd slept for hours. Multiple missed calls and texts from Tom indicated escalating concern about my absence. The latest message was ominous. If I don't hear from you by morning, I'm filing a missing persons report. Your health situation is too precarious for you to be away without medical supervision. He was laying groundwork, I realized with a chill, establishing a narrative that I was mentally or physically incapable of making decisions, perhaps setting up for a guardianship claim if he discovered I was challenging him. Michelle was still working in the living room. Legal documents spread across every surface. Good timing, she said when I appeared. Robert just sent over something interesting from Jason Foreman. She handed me a tablet displaying a series of email exchanges between Tom and Rebecca Parker dating back nearly a year, 2 before my diagnosis. Where did these come from? I asked, scanning the damning messages that clearly established their relationship and plans for Horizon long predated my illness. Jason maintained admin access to the company's email archives after he stepped back from day-to-day operations, Michelle explained. When Robert explained what was happening, Jason did some digging. I continued reading, my stomach clenching, as I discovered just how long and how thoroughly Tom had been planning his betrayal. One exchange from 2 months before my diagnosis was particularly telling. Rebecca. The board is still too attached to the Horizon family messaging that Jennifer pushes. They'll resist any major restructuring while she's involved. Tom. Working on a solution. Need to separate her from the company before we move forward. We'll update when I have a clearer strategy. He was planning to push me out even before I got sick, I murmured, the realization landing like a physical blow. The cancer just made it more convenient. Michelle squeezed my shoulder supportively. More evidence for our case. And speaking of evidence, Diane came through. She opened her laptop to show me the financial reports Diane had secretly compiled and sent through a secure file-sharing service. The contrast between these accurate figures and what Tom had been presenting to the board was stark. Horizon's actual valuation is nearly double what the Axion deal reflects, I noted, reviewing the numbers. And the projected revenue growth is significantly stronger than what's being reported. Classic case of deliberate undervaluation to, justify a fire sale, Michelle agreed. The board would never approve this deal if they had the real data. As we continued analyzing the evidence, a notification appeared on Michelle's screen. An email from Robert with a single line. Turn on Channel 7 News now. Michelle grabbed the remote, quickly finding the station. A polished news anchor was mid-sentence. Sources close to the company confirm that Horizon Solutions, one of Chicago's fastest-growing tech firms, is in final discussions for acquisition by Axion Ventures. The deal, reportedly valued at approximately $150 million, is expected to be announced next week pending board approval. I stared at the screen in shock. They've leaked it to the press. They're trying to create momentum, make it seem like a done deal. Standard tactic, Michelle noted grimly. Create public expectation to pressure the board into approval. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Just saw the news. Many of us inside Horizon are concerned. What can we do to help? Diane. The news leak had an unintended consequence. It was galvanizing opposition within Horizon itself. As I crafted a careful response to Diane, more messages arrived from other longtime employees who had my personal contact information, all expressing alarm about the acquisition. Rumors. This might actually work in our favor, I realized, showing Michelle the messages. Tom's leak is creating exactly the kind of internal resistance that could strengthen our position. We need to capitalize on this quickly, Michelle agreed. Tomorrow morning, we should reach out to those key clients we identified. As we refined our strategy for the coming day, another text arrived from Tom, his tone now shifting from concern to suspicion. Just saw you filed paperwork regarding Willstar. We need to talk immediately. Whatever you're thinking of doing, remember your health has to be the priority. The implied threat was clear. He would use my illness against me if necessary, perhaps claiming I was making irrational decisions due to medication or stress. He knows, I said, showing Michelle the message. Sooner than expected, but not surprising, she replied. The question is, how will he respond now that he realizes you're fighting back? We didn't have to wait long for an answer. My phone rang. Not Tom, but Dr. Sharma, calling at nearly 11 p.m. Jennifer, I apologize for the late call, she said, her voice tense. I thought you should know that Tom visited my office today, requesting copies of all your medical records and detailed information about your treatment's effects on cognitive function. My blood ran cold. Did you provide them? Of course not without your consent, she assured me. But he became quite insistent, claiming concerns about your decision-making capacity. When I refused, he mentioned seeking a court order for a psychological evaluation. He was moving faster and more aggressively than we'd anticipated, laying groundwork to challenge my mental competence. Thank you for warning me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Did he indicate his next steps? He mentioned speaking. With Judge Hamilton first thing tomorrow, Dr. Sharma replied, confirming our fears. Jennifer, if he's attempting to establish grounds for temporary guardianship based on medical incapacity, you need legal protection immediately. After thanking Dr. Sharma and ending the call, I relayed the conversation to Michelle, whose expression hardened. We need to file our petitions first thing tomorrow, she said, already reaching for her phone. I'll have the team ready at the courthouse when it opens. We need to get our version of events before a judge before Tom can implement whatever he's planning with Hamilton. The remainder of the evening was spent preparing final documentation and coordinating with Robert, who would begin approaching Horizon's key clients in the morning, with evidence of Axion's true intentions for the company. After acquisition, as midnight approached, exhaustion overwhelmed me again, the combined effects of cancer recovery and emotional stress taking their toll. Michelle insisted I get more rest while she finalized our legal filings. Tomorrow's the real battle, she said, gently steering me toward the guest room. You'll need your strength. I didn't argue, knowing she was right. As I settled into bed, I found myself reflecting on how dramatically my life had changed in just a few days. The woman who had returned home from the hospital trusting her husband and focusing solely on recovery was gone. In her place was someone I barely recognized, strategic, calculating, driven by a determination not just to survive but to win. Tom had underestimated me, assuming my illness had rendered me too weak and distracted to fight back. Perhaps the greatest irony was that, in betraying me, he had inadvertently forced me to rediscover my strength. My last thought before drifting off was a realization that should have been painful, but instead felt strangely liberating. The marriage I had believed in was long dead, perhaps had never truly existed as I'd imagined it. But Horizon, the company, we'd built together, the people who depended on it, the vision it represented. That was worth fighting for. And fight I would, starting tomorrow morning. I was awakened by Michelle gently shaking my shoulder, the smell of fresh coffee filling the room. "Jen, it's 6:30. We need to move quickly. Robert just called with news." I blinked away sleep, accepting the mug she offered. "What's happened?" "Tom's called an emergency board meeting for 10 a.m., she said, her expression grim. "He's accelerating the timeline, probably hoping to secure approval before our legal challenges can be filed." Adrenaline cleared the last fog of sleep from my mind. He must have realized how much we know. We need to get to the courthouse the moment it opens. "Already arranged," Michelle assured me. "Olivia's team will be there at 8 a.m. sharp with our filings. Robert and Jason are mobilizing other shareholders by phone. And Diane sent a message. She's prepared packets of the accurate financial data for each board member and plans to distribute them before the meeting begins." I dressed quickly in clothes Michelle had purchased for me, a simple but professional outfit that would present the image of competence and control we needed to establish. As I applied minimal makeup, I studied my reflection. The woman looking back at me was thinner than before my diagnosis, with shadows under her eyes and cheekbones more prominent than they had been. But there was something else there too, a determination, a clarity of purpose that had been missing before. "Ready for war?" Michelle asked from the doorway. I nodded, turning away from the mirror. More than ready. The morning unfolded with the precision of a military operation. By 8:15, Michelle had confirmation that our legal filings were being processed, the petition to invalidate the fraudulent divorce, the emergency injunction against major Horizon transactions, and formal documentation of my controlling interest in Willstar Enterprises. "The clerk says Judge Baxter will review our emergency filing within the hour," Michelle reported. "If approved, the injunction should be delivered to Horizon's board meeting before they can vote on the acquisition." Meanwhile, Robert had been extraordinarily busy. Text updates arrived regularly. Jason and 3 other original shareholders confirmed for emergency proxy voting. Contacted Mendel Systems, Horizon's biggest client. Their legal team now reviewing their service agreements in light of acquisition news. 2 board members expressing serious reservations after receiving Diane's financial packets. As 9:30 approached, Michelle received the call we'd been waiting for. "Judge Baxter has granted the emergency injunction," she announced, relief evident in her voice. "Tom is temporarily barred from proceeding with any major transactions or structural changes to Horizon, pending a hearing on the ownership dispute." "Will it be delivered in time?" I asked, acutely aware of the board meeting scheduled to begin in 30 minutes. "Court officers are on their way to Horizon's offices now," Michelle confirmed, "and I've arranged for copies to be sent electronically to all board members simultaneously." We relocated to Robert's downtown apartment, where he had established a makeshift command center with multiple phones, laptops, and a real-time messaging system connecting our various allies. From this central location, we could coordinate responses as the situation evolved. At precisely 9:58 a.m., my phone rang, Tom's name appearing on the screen. After a brief hesitation, I answered, putting the call on speaker so Michelle and Robert could hear. "Jennifer." His voice was controlled, but with an undercurrent of fury I recognized from our rare but significant arguments. "Would you care?" To explain what the hell you think you're doing. Protecting what's mine, I replied calmly. What we built together, Tom. What you tried to steal from me while I was fighting for my life. You're not thinking clearly, he countered, his tone shifting to one of practiced concern. The medication, the stress of treatment, you're not in a position to make complex business decisions right now. Interesting argument, I noted coolly. But Judge Baxter seems to disagree. I understand the court officers arrived just as your board meeting was about to begin. Inconvenient timing. A momentary silence followed, then, "This isn't going to end well for you, Jen. You're jeopardizing a deal that would benefit everyone involved. The board will still vote to approve once they understand the full picture." You mean once they see the manipulated financials instead of the actual performance data? Or once you convince them that liquidating the company and firing 60% of the staff is somehow beneficial? Another silence, longer this time. When Tom spoke again, his voice had hardened. You've been busy for someone supposedly focusing on recovery. I wonder what Dr. Sharma would say about this level of stress during your treatment. You can ask her yourself at the competency hearing you're trying to arrange, I replied, though you might be surprised by her assessment of which of us is acting irrationally. Robert signaled me from across the room, pointing to his laptop screen where emails were arriving in rapid succession. I need to go, Tom, I said. It seems the board members have questions about the significant discrepancies between your valuation figures and the actual company performance. Perhaps you should focus on explaining those rather than questioning my competence. I ended the call before he could respond, turning my attention to the unfolding situation Robert was monitoring. The board meeting has been officially suspended, he reported, reading incoming messages. 2 members have formally requested a full independent financial audit before resuming discussions about any acquisition. And Mendel Systems has just issued a statement expressing serious concerns about service continuity if the Axion acquisition proceeds. Michelle was reviewing legal updates on her phone. Tom's emergency petition for a competency evaluation has been denied pending our hearing on the fraudulent divorce filing. Judge Baxter wants to see all parties in his chambers tomorrow morning. For a moment, the 3 of us sat in stunned silence, hardly daring to believe how quickly the tide had turned. Is it really happening? I finally asked. Are we actually stopping this? We've won the first battle, Robert cautioned. But Tom won't give up easily, and Axion has significant resources. This is just the beginning. Then we keep fighting, I said, a strange calm settling over me. Because I've discovered something important through all this. Michelle raised an eyebrow questioningly. Tom thought cancer made me weak, vulnerable, easy to discard, I explained. He never understood that surviving something like that changes you, makes you realize what matters, makes you stronger in ways that have nothing to do with physical health. Robert nodded thoughtfully. So, what's our next move? I smiled, feeling more clear-headed and determined than I had in months. Now we take back what's ours, completely. The next morning dawned with a clarity I hadn't experienced since before my diagnosis. I stood at Michelle's kitchen window, watching the early light transform Chicago's skyline from shadowy silhouettes to gleaming towers. In a few hours, we would face Tom and his attorneys in Judge Baxter's chambers, the first direct confrontation since I'd discovered his betrayal. Ready for this? Michelle asked, joining me with fresh coffee. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, accepting the mug gratefully. Any updates from Robert? She nodded, checking her phone. He's gathered statements from 7 former and current Horizon employees detailing how Tom's management changed after your diagnosis. Diane has compiled a comprehensive financial analysis showing the deliberate devaluation of company assets, and 3 board members have formally requested to attend today's hearing, which Olivia thinks Judge Baxter will allow. The momentum had shifted dramatically in our favor over the past 24 hours. What Tom had planned as a swift, secretive coup had transformed into a very public battle with growing scrutiny from all directions. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Sharma. Received subpoena for your medical records from Tom's attorney. Have prepared statement regarding your cognitive capacity and decision-making abilities. Let me know if you need anything else for today's hearing. Another unexpected ally. I was discovering that for every betrayal I'd suffered, there were people willing to stand with me. Some I'd known for years, others who'd entered my life. Only recently, all united by a basic sense of justice and decency that Tom had abandoned. Car service will be here in 20 minutes, Michelle announced, already dressed in her courtroom attire, a tailored navy suit that projected both competence and confidence. Olivia and the team will meet us at the courthouse. I dressed carefully. In the outfit we'd selected, professional but not overly formal, projecting stability without appearing overly calculating. Every detail mattered in creating the right impression for Judge Baxter. The ride to the courthouse was silent, each of us lost in preparation for what lay ahead. I rehearsed key points in my mind, anticipating Tom's likely arguments and planning my responses. He would claim I was acting irrationally due to medication and illness. He would present himself as the concerned husband protecting both me and the company during my incapacity. He would minimize the forged documents as a mere technicality, a matter of timing rather than intent. All lies, but delivered with the practiced conviction that had won him countless legal victories over the years. Remember, Michelle said as our car approached the courthouse, Judge Baxter's reputation is built on cutting through manipulation to find the truth. He won't be swayed by Tom's performance, especially with the evidence we've gathered. The courthouse steps were busier than expected, with several business reporters milling about. News of the dispute had reached financial circles, with speculation about what it meant for Horizon's future and the blocked Axion acquisition. Mrs. Wilson. One reporter spotted me, triggering a small surge in our direction. Any comment on the allegations of corporate fraud at Horizon Solutions? Michelle stepped forward smoothly. No comments at this time. All matters will be addressed in appropriate legal venues. We navigated past the press to the relative calm of the courthouse interior, where Olivia waited with her legal team. They're already inside, she informed us, nodding toward the judge's chambers. Tom, his attorney James Patterson, and Rebecca, Parker as Axion's representative. Rebecca's here? I hadn't expected her to show her face so directly. Apparently, Axion is arguing they have standing in this dispute since it affects their acquisition plans, Olivia explained, her expression suggesting what she thought of that argument. Before we could discuss further, the clerk appeared. Judge Baxter will see all parties now. The judge's chambers were spacious but formal, dominated by a large conference table rather than the traditional desk arrangement. Judge Baxter himself was a surprise. Younger than I'd expected, perhaps early 50s, with intelligent eyes that assessed everyone as we entered. Tom and his team sat on one side, their expressions carefully neutral. Tom himself looked impeccable as always in his courtroom attire, but I noticed the slight tension around his eyes, the tightness in his jaw. Beside him, Rebecca Parker maintained a professional demeanor, though she avoided meeting my gaze directly. Good morning, Judge Baxter began once everyone was seated. I've reviewed the emergency filings from both parties and determined we need clarity on several key issues before proceeding further. This is not a formal hearing, but an opportunity to establish facts and determine appropriate next steps. He turned directly to me. Mrs. Wilson, I understand you're currently undergoing cancer treatment. First, let me express my concern for your health and well-being during this difficult time. Thank you, Your Honor, I replied, maintaining direct eye contact. Mr. Wilson, he continued, shifting his attention to Tom, your emergency petition. raises concerns about your wife's capacity to make significant business decisions during her treatment. However, I note there's no supporting medical documentation beyond your personal observations. Can you elaborate? Tom leaned forward slightly, his expression shifting to one of sincere concern. Your Honor, my only priority is Jennifer's health and well-being. The stress of complex business matters during cancer recovery could be devastating to her progress. Her oncologist has consistently emphasized the importance of avoiding stressful situations. Actually, Your Honor, Michelle interjected smoothly, Dr. Priya Sharma, Mrs. Wilson's oncologist, has provided a statement directly addressing these concerns. She passed copies to the clerk, who distributed them to all parties. As you'll see, Dr. Sharma specifically confirms that Mrs. Wilson's cognitive functions remain entirely unimpaired, and her decision-making capacity has not been affected by either her condition or her treatment. Judge Baxter read the statement carefully, while Tom conferred urgently with his attorney. I could see the moment they realized one of their primary arguments had just collapsed. More concerning, the judge continued, looking up from Dr. Sharma's statement. Are the allegations regarding divorce proceedings allegedly conducted without Mrs. Wilson's knowledge or consent? Mr. Wilson, these are extremely serious claims. Tom's attorney stepped in. Your Honor, while the timing was perhaps unfortunate, my client was advised that resolving property matters during Mrs. Wilson's illness would protect both parties from prolonged legal proceedings during her recovery. Mrs. Wilson was represented by counsel throughout the process. Was I? I spoke directly for the first time, my voice steady. Because this is the first I've heard of having an attorney for divorce proceedings I never agreed to. Mrs. Wilson was represented by Thomas Goldberg, Tom's attorney stated firmly. Interesting, Michelle replied, because we have an affidavit from Mr. Goldberg stating he never met with Mrs. Wilson, never discussed divorce proceedings with her, and was led to believe she was incapacitated and communicating exclusively through Mr. Wilson due to her medical condition. She produced another document which the clerk again distributed. I watched Tom's face as he read Goldberg's statement, seeing the momentary flash of alarm before he regained his composed expression. Judge Baxter studied the affidavit carefully. This raises serious ethical concerns, Mr. Wilson. At minimum, it suggests a deliberate attempt to circumvent proper legal procedure. Your Honor, Tom began, there appears to be a misunderstanding. The signatures, I interrupted quietly. Perhaps we should discuss the signatures on the divorce documents. The judge nodded. Indeed. I've reviewed the petition's claim that Mrs. Wilson's signatures were forged. Mrs. Wilson, can you elaborate? I opened the folder Michelle had prepared, removing several documents. These are examples of my actual signature from before my illness, Your Honor. And this, I placed the divorce papers beside them, is what appears on the divorce settlement. I never signed these documents. I never saw these documents until 3 days ago. I never consented to any divorce proceedings. Judge Baxter compared the signatures, his expression growing increasingly grave. Mr. Wilson, these discrepancies are concerning. Do you dispute Mrs. Wilson's claim that these signatures are not authentic? Tom hesitated, clearly weighing his options. His attorney whispered something urgently, but Tom made a slight dismissive gesture before speaking. Your Honor, during Jennifer's most difficult treatment periods, she authorized me to handle various administrative matters on her behalf. I may have extended that authority to these documents, believing it was in her best interest to resolve these matters quickly rather than burden her during her illness. The admission hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone present. Tom had just acknowledged, however obliquely, that he had forged my signature. Judge Baxter's expression hardened. Mr. Wilson, are you admitting to falsifying your wife's signature on legal documents? Tom's attorney immediately intervened. Your Honor, my client is not making any such admission. He was acting under the good faith belief that he had implied authority to facilitate these matters during Mrs. Wilson's incapacity. I was never incapacitated, I stated firmly. Ill, yes. Undergoing treatment, yes. But at no point did I lose the capacity to make my own decisions or authorize anyone to sign legal documents on my behalf. The judge turned to Rebecca Parker, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. Ms. Parker, as Axion's representative, I'm curious about your company's due diligence process. Were you aware of these unusual circumstances surrounding Mrs. Wilson's involvement in Horizon Solutions? Rebecca shifted uncomfortably. Axion relied on representations made by Mr. Wilson regarding company ownership and authority. Our due diligence focused primarily on Horizon's financials and market position. Interesting you should mention financials, Michelle interjected, producing another folder. Your Honor, we have documentation showing significant discrepancies between Horizon's actual financial performance and what was presented to both the board and Axion Ventures as part of the acquisition discussions. This was clearly new information to the judge, who accepted the documents with heightened interest. Ms. Parker, were you aware of these alleged discrepancies? Rebecca glanced at Tom before responding carefully. Axion performed standard due diligence based on the information provided by Horizon's management team. If there are inconsistencies, we were not made aware of them. Tom's attorney tried to redirect the conversation. Your Honor, these financial matters are separate from the immediate issues regarding Mrs. Wilson's capacity and the validity of the divorce proceedings. On the contrary, Olivia countered, they establish a pattern of deliberate misrepresentation and highlight the motive behind Mr. Wilson's actions. By removing Mrs. Wilson from both the marriage and the company ownership structure while she was vulnerable, he facilitated the undervalued sale of Horizon Solutions to Axion Ventures, a sale that would have personally benefited him through substantial consulting fees, while harming other shareholders, employees, and the company itself. Judge Baxter considered this for a moment before turning to three individuals who had been silently observing from the back of the room, the Horizon board members who had requested to attend. As directors with fiduciary responsibilities to Horizon Solutions, do you have any input regarding these allegations? Edward Mercer, the longest-serving board member, spoke first. Your Honor, the board was not informed of Mrs. Wilson's continued ownership interest through Willstar Enterprises, nor were we made aware of the circumstances surrounding her absence from company operations. The financial discrepancies presented today are deeply concerning and would certainly have affected our deliberations regarding the proposed acquisition. The other board members nodded in agreement, creating another damaging moment for Tom's position. Judge Baxter began collecting the various documents, organizing them methodically as he considered his next steps. Finally, he looked up, his decision apparently reached. Based on the evidence presented, I'm issuing an immediate stay on all divorce proceedings pending a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding the original filing. Furthermore, I'm extending the temporary injunction against any sale or significant restructuring of Horizon Solutions until ownership interests can be properly established. He turned directly to Tom. Mr. Wilson, I am referring the matter of the disputed signatures to the district attorney's office for potential criminal investigation. I strongly advise you to secure appropriate legal counsel for that process. Tom's face had gone pale, his carefully constructed facade finally cracking. His attorney leaned in, whispering urgently, while Rebecca Parker stared straight ahead, her expression unreadable. Mrs. Wilson, the judge continued, your medical condition adds a concerning dimension to these proceedings. The court will prioritize resolving these matters expeditiously to minimize additional stress during your recovery. Thank you, Your Honor, I replied, maintaining my composure despite the surge of vindication I felt. We will reconvene for a formal hearing on all matters in 1 week, In the meantime, I'm appointing a court monitor to oversee Horizon's operations and ensure no further attempts are made to alter its ownership or financial structure. That will be all for today. As we gathered our materials to leave, Tom approached, his attorney hovering anxiously nearby. "Jennifer," he said quietly, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "This doesn't have to become more contentious. We can still reach an agreement that benefits everyone." I met his gaze directly, searching for any remnant of the man I thought I'd married. "You divorced me while I was fighting cancer, Tom. You forged my signature, stole my company, and planned to dismantle everything we built together. There's no agreement possible that benefits everyone after that." "You're making a mistake," he warned, his tone hardening. "Horizon needs strong leadership right now, not a protracted legal battle." "On that we agree," I replied, "which is why I'll be petitioning the board to reinstate me as chief marketing officer until this situation is resolved. I built Horizon's brand once. I can stabilize it again despite the damage you've done." Before he could respond, Rebecca Parker appeared at his side. "Tom, we need to discuss Axion's position immediately. The board is requesting an emergency call with our leadership team." I noticed she carefully avoided looking at me directly. "Ms. Parker," I said, causing her to reluctantly meet my gaze, "I'd review your employment contract with Axion very carefully. Companies like that are quick to find scapegoats when their plans collapse." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face before she composed herself and guided Tom away. I watched them leave, their body language tense and defensive, a stark contrast to the confident conspirators who had planned to build their future on the ruins of mine. "That went better than expected," Michelle commented as we left the judges' chambers. Baxter saw right through Tom's concerned husband act. "The forged signatures were the turning point," Olivia added. "Once Tom essentially admitted to that, everything else became more credible." Outside the courthouse, the reporters were still waiting, their numbers having increased. "Mrs. Wilson, can you comment on Judge Baxter's decision? Will you be returning to Horizon Solutions?" This time, I didn't let Michelle shield me. These were questions I needed to answer myself. "Judge Baxter has ordered a full investigation into serious allegations regarding Horizon's management and the proposed Axion acquisition," I stated, my voice steady and clear. As one of Horizon's founders and a significant shareholder, my priority is protecting the company, its employees, and its clients from potential harm. I look forward to working with the board and the court-appointed monitor to ensure Horizon's continued success during this challenging period. "Are you concerned about managing company responsibilities during your cancer treatment?" another reporter called out. "Cancer taught me what truly matters and what I'm capable of," I replied. "Horizon has always been more than just a company. To me, it's a community of talented people creating meaningful solutions. Supporting that community is an essential part of my recovery, not a hindrance to it." As we moved toward our waiting car, I caught sight of Robert standing at the edge of the crowd, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. He gave me a slight nod of approval before disappearing into the flow of pedestrians. Back at Michelle's apartment, we found Daniel waiting with updates on the financial investigation. "The court monitor has already accessed Horizon's systems," he reported. "Tom and Greg Phillips are being temporarily restricted from certain accounting functions pending review." "What about Rebecca and Axion?" I asked, sinking gratefully onto the sofa, the morning's adrenaline beginning to fade. "Damage. Control mode," Daniel replied. "They've issued a statement claiming they were misled about Horizon's ownership structure and are re-evaluating the acquisition terms. Translation: they're looking for an exit strategy that doesn't implicate them in potential fraud," Michelle interpreted, setting her briefcase aside. My phone buzzed with messages from various Horizon employees who had seen the news coverage, many expressing support and relief that the acquisition might be derailed. Diane's message was particularly heartening. Financial team solidly behind. You. Let us know how we can help. The solidarity was overwhelming after months of isolation during my treatment. While fighting cancer, I'd withdrawn from many professional connections, focusing entirely on my health. Tom had exploited that withdrawal, gradually erasing my presence from the company. Now, I was reconnecting with the community we'd built, discovering that my absence had been noted and my return welcomed. "What's our next move?" Michelle asked, interrupting my thoughts. "The board," I replied decisively. "With the acquisition blocked and Tom under investigation, they'll be looking for stability. I need to meet with them formally, establish myself as part of the solution rather than another problem." Mercer seemed receptive in the hearing, Olivia noted. "He might help facilitate that meeting." I nodded, already composing a message to the senior board member requesting a conversation about Horizon's immediate needs and my potential role in addressing them. The remainder of the day passed in a flurry of strategic discussions and planning. Robert joined us later, bringing word from his industry contacts that Axion was already negotiating with Tom's attorney about severing their connection with minimal legal exposure. "They're throwing him under the bus," Robert reported with grim satisfaction. "Rebecca's position at Axion is apparently under review as well. They're claiming she exceeded her authority in making certain representations to Tom about the acquisition. Terms honor among thieves," Michelle commented dryly. By evening, exhaustion had caught up with me again. Dr. Sharma had warned repeatedly about overexertion during recovery, and the day's emotional intensity had depleted my limited reserves. "You should rest," Michelle insisted, noticing my fatigue. "We can continue planning tomorrow." I didn't argue, retiring to the guest room while the others continued working. Despite my physical exhaustion, my mind remained active, processing the day's developments and planning next steps. Tom had underestimated me, assumed my illness had rendered me powerless. That miscalculation had been his first mistake. His second was forgetting what had made Horizon successful in the first place. Not just his legal strategy or business acumen, but my ability to build relationships, to create community around a shared vision. As I drifted toward sleep, my phone buzzed with one final message of the day from Edward Mercer. "Board meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Your presence requested. Time to discuss Horizon's future leadership." Morning brought new energy and purpose. After a light breakfast and my medication, I prepared for the board meeting with Michelle's help, reviewing key points and anticipating potential questions. "Focus on stability and continuity," she advised, as we selected an outfit that balanced professionalism with approachability. The board's primary concern will be reassuring clients and employees after this upheaval. "And addressing the leadership vacuum," I added, styling my hair to minimize evidence of the thinning caused by chemotherapy. With Tom sidelined and under investigation, Horizon needs clear direction. Robert arrived mid-morning with additional intelligence gathered from his contacts inside the company. "Tom cleaned out his office last night," he reported. "Security was present at the board's request. He's been placed on administrative leave pending the investigations." "And Rebecca?" I asked. Axion recalled her to their headquarters. Word is she's being reassigned to their Singapore office, effectively exiled from the Chicago business community. The swift consequences for both Tom and Rebecca were satisfying, but not unexpected. The business world could be brutally efficient in cutting loose those who created liability or embarrassment. "What about Greg Phillips?" I asked, referring to the CFO Tom had installed after forcing Robert out. "Cooperating with the court monitor," Robert replied, claiming he was just following Tom's directives regarding the financial reporting. "Convenient," Michelle observed skeptically. "But potentially useful," I countered. "If he's willing to provide evidence against Tom to save himself, that strengthens our position." As the board meeting time approached, my nervous energy increased. This would be my first official return to Horizon since beginning cancer treatment, a homecoming under the most unusual circumstances. When we arrived at Horizon's downtown offices, the atmosphere was palpably tense. Employees watched curiously as I passed through the familiar spaces, some offering encouragement, others simply observing with uncertain expressions. The executive conference room held the full board, 7 members seated around the polished table where so many company milestones had been celebrated over the years. Edward Mercer rose to greet me, his handshake firm and direct. "Jennifer, thank you for coming on short notice. Please have a seat." I took the offered chair, noting it was positioned at the head of the table, a symbolic placement that wasn't lost on anyone present. "Before we begin," Mercer continued, "I want to express the board's regret regarding the circumstances that have brought us here today. The events revealed in yesterday's hearing were troubling, to say the least." Murmurs of agreement circled the table. These were sophisticated business leaders who understood the implications of what Tom had attempted, not just the personal betrayal, but the potential legal and financial repercussions for Horizon itself. "We've placed Thomas Wilson on indefinite administrative leave," Mercer explained, "and have cooperated fully with the court-appointed monitor reviewing our financials. The proposed Axion acquisition has been formally terminated by mutual agreement of both parties." This was positive news, but created an immediate challenge, which leaves Horizon without a CEO during a period of significant uncertainty, I noted. "Precisely," Mercer agreed, which brings us to the purpose of today's meeting. The board believes Horizon needs leadership that understands its core values and has the trust of both our clients and our team. He glanced around the table, receiving subtle nods from the other members before continuing. "We would like to offer you the position of Interim Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately, with potential for permanent appointment following a 90-day evaluation period. Though I had hoped for exactly this outcome, the directness of the offer momentarily surprised me. That's a significant responsibility, especially given my ongoing recovery. We're prepared to provide whatever support systems you need," another board member, Patricia Winters, interjected. "Your health remains a priority, but your presence, even in a limited capacity initially, would provide much-needed stability during this transition." "We're not asking you to do this alone," Mercer added. "Robert Jenkins has indicated willingness to return as CFO, which would immediately strengthen our financial oversight. And we're prepared to adjust meeting schedules and reporting structures to accommodate your treatment requirements." I considered the offer carefully, aware that my decision would affect not just my future, but the livelihoods of hundreds of Horizon employees. The company needed leadership that understood its history and values, someone who could restore trust after Tom's betrayal. Despite my health challenges, I was uniquely positioned to provide that leadership. "I accept," I said finally, "with 2 conditions." Mercer raised an eyebrow questioningly. "First, complete transparency with employees about what's happened and what comes next. No corporate doublespeak about leadership transitions or strategic realignments. They deserve the truth." "Agreed," Mercer replied, somewhat surprised by the straightforward request. "And the second condition?" "A comprehensive review of all decisions made during my absence, particularly regarding personnel. I want to ensure no one else was pushed out the way Robert was for questioning Tom's actions." The board members exchanged glances before Mercer nodded. "That seems both fair and prudent under the circumstances." "Then we have an agreement," I said, feeling a surge of determination. "I'll need a few days to establish a medical schedule with Dr. Sharma that balances treatment with my new responsibilities, but I can begin transitioning immediately." The remainder of the meeting addressed practical matters, announcing the leadership change, communicating with key clients, and establishing priorities for the coming weeks. Throughout the discussion, I found myself drawing on strengths I'd developed during cancer treatment, the ability to focus on what truly mattered, to conserve energy for essential tasks, to accept help when needed. As the meeting concluded, Mercer pulled me aside. I've worked with many executives over the years, Jennifer. Few would have the strength to take this on while fighting cancer. Cancer changes your perspective, I replied simply. It shows you what you're capable of when there's no alternative but to keep fighting. He nodded thoughtfully. For what it's worth, many of us had concerns about Tom's management decisions these past months. We should have asked more questions, looked more closely at the numbers. We all missed signs we should have seen, I acknowledged. Now our job is to repair the damage and rebuild what nearly was lost. As I left the conference room, Robert was waiting in the hallway, his expression a mix of satisfaction and concern. "So, boss," he said with a slight smile, "ready to save the company?" "Not alone," I replied. "I'll need my CFO back immediately. Think you can start tomorrow?" "Already cleared my calendar," he confirmed. "Though I do have one question. What happens when we inevitably cross paths with Tom during the investigations and legal proceedings?" This is a small business community. I considered this, remembering Tom's warning that I was making a mistake by fighting back. We focus on Horizon, not on him. Success is our best response. Besides, I added with unexpected lightness, if I can handle stage 3 cancer, I can certainly handle seeing my ex-husband in a deposition. Robert's laugh broke the tension of the moment. "Welcome back, Jennifer. Horizon's missed you." Walking through the office toward the elevator, I was struck by the symmetry of the situation. Months ago, I had left these halls uncertain if I would survive cancer, only to return having survived both the disease and Tom's betrayal. Both experiences had fundamentally changed me, stripped away pretenses and assumptions, revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed. As the elevator doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished metal. Thinner, yes, but standing straighter than before, eyes clear and focused. Tom had seen my illness as weakness, an opportunity to discard me and take what he wanted. Instead, it had become the forge that tempered my resolve and clarified my purpose. The doors opened to the lobby where Michelle waited with our car. "Well," she asked as I approached. "Meet Horizon's new interim CEO," I replied, unable to suppress a smile. Her eyes widened. "They offered it directly? No search process? No committees?" "Sometimes crisis clarifies priorities," I said as we exited the building into the bright afternoon sunlight. "Horizon needs healing, and so do I. Perhaps we can help each other recover." As our car pulled away from the curb, I glanced back at the gleaming tower that housed the company Tom and I had built together. The company he had nearly destroyed. The company I would now lead into its next chapter. The symmetry was perfect. The justice poetic. Tom had secretly divorced me while I battled illness. I had secretly reclaimed our company while he celebrated his apparent victory. And this was just the beginning of my comeback story. 1 year later, I stood at the podium during Horizon's annual client appreciation event, surveying the crowded ballroom with quiet satisfaction. The company hadn't just survived the turmoil, it had thrived. Our stock value had increased by 42%. Employee retention had reached record levels. And most importantly, the innovative spirit that had defined Horizon from the beginning had been fully restored. My cancer was in remission. The short hair that had grown back after treatment had become my signature look, a visible reminder of all I had overcome. Many people told me it made me look more authoritative, which always made me smile. Nothing builds authority quite like fighting for your life and winning. Tom's legal troubles had mounted steadily after Judge Baxter's initial ruling. The forgery charges were just the beginning. Investigations revealed additional financial improprieties, resulting in a settlement that permanently barred him from serving as an officer in any publicly traded company. Last I heard, he'd relocated to Arizona, attempting to rebuild his legal practice far from the Chicago business community that had once celebrated him. Rebecca Parker hadn't fared much better. Her reassignment to Axion's Singapore office had been brief, followed by a quiet dismissal when the company distanced itself from the failed acquisition attempt. She'd since launched a small consulting practice, though her reputation remained tarnished by the Horizon debacle. As I concluded my remarks to enthusiastic applause, I caught Robert's eye from the side of the stage. His subtle nod conveyed shared pride in what we'd accomplished. Beside him stood Michelle, who had transitioned from my personal attorney to Horizon's general counsel, strengthening our legal position while becoming an advocate for ethical corporate governance throughout the industry. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Edward Mercer approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "To Horizon's most successful year to date," he said, offering me one. "The board has unanimously approved removing interim from your title, by the way, if you're willing to accept the permanent position." I smiled, accepting both the champagne and the offer. "I think I've proven I can handle it." "More than proven," he agreed, "though I remain amazed you never pursued criminal charges against Tom beyond what the DA filed." "Living well is the best revenge," I replied simply. "Horizon's success speaks louder than any court judgment could." As I drove home that night to my new lakefront condo, I reflected on the strange journey of the past 18 months. Cancer had nearly taken my life. Tom had nearly taken everything else. Yet here I stood, stronger, wiser, and more fulfilled than before either challenge. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the most profound transformations. Tom's secret divorce during my illness had been meant to destroy me. Instead, it had revealed exactly what I was capable of surviving, and exactly what I was capable of building from the ashes of betrayal. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.